Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Environmental Social Justice. Today's special guest is Mr. Tucker Perkins. He is the president and CEO of the Propane Education and Research Council. Today, we're going to be talking about green propane. So welcome to the show, Tucker.
Wendy, great to be with you. Thank you very much for having me.
Of course. And, I also have to introduce my co-host, Ms. Joy Langford. Welcome back, Joy. Welcome. Good to see you.
Hi.
And so, Tucker, propane is a byproduct of natural gas. How can we make this green?
Well, we're making it green, first off, by really changing how we make it from natural gas, doing a lot of work, and just back from working with the producers now, is they use less electricity or less energy to even separate the propane from natural gas. The answer to your question, though, really is we're beginning to change its composition and use more renewable sources. So today, making it from fats, oils, and greases, but also beginning to make it from some plants. In fact, a couple exciting developments over the last couple months, where one plant in particular, camelina weed, never even heard of it until 6 months ago, but non-food cover crop, drought tolerant, genetically modified, frankly, to even be more drought tolerant, and easily goes from a plant to renewable propane. Carbon intensity will be 0 or less. So just a good example of kind of where we are today and where we're going. I think the thing that I always start with is natural gas first, propane second, even today is cleaner than electricity in 38 of the states in the US and frankly, in almost all of the balancing authorities. So our goal is always to stay ahead of the electric grid in carbon intensity, that single metric around the climate. And today, as I said, 38 states, we're cleaner than electricity today. So we don't need renewable propane or certified natural gas, renewable natural gas to benefit the environment. But certainly 2 decades from now,
yes,
you and I won't be talking about conventional propane. We'll be talking about almost exclusively renewable propane. In California, you'll be talking about it before 2030, almost as an exclusive fuel.
No, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up in the future, because everyone is migrating towards a net zero emissions, zero pollution output. And I mean, I'm a huge fan of all forms of electricity, or rather energy, as long as it doesn't emit carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, greenhouse gases. So it's going to be hard for people to grasp that propane can be determined to be green because of the, it's just got sort of a bad history to it. And what you guys are doing is, as you said, with this plant, I did not know that until this very second that you were using that. So what other uses could propane be used for with this new technology?
Well, I just finished a study, a quantitative study, because I'm asked that all the time. I know propane as the fuel in my grill.
Yes.
42 million homes in America use a propane grill, but they're like, what on earth do we use it past that? And, I'm quick to say, we think about it beyond the natural gas main, 800,000 farms, not farmers, but 800,000 farms use propane every day. 5 million homes use propane for their primary heat. Another 2 million homes use it for something other than heat, hot water, cooking. So when you add all that up, I mean, this morning, 1.2 million children went to school in school buses that were powered by propane. Why? Because it's so much cleaner than diesel. So you kind of add all that up, it's this crazy statistic evolves in that propane as an energy is only about 2.5% of the energy mix in America. Relatively irrelevant, I might add, 2.5%. Yet we touch 65, 67% of the population every day. So it's not unlike this conversation. It's about, being out on the margins and how we do impact things. And really beyond the natural gas main, propane really should be the fuel of choice. And to your point, Wendy, earlier, you're talking about you support all forms of energy. That's exactly where we are. And, I'm kind of the champion of the wide path theory, right? We cannot get beholden, and we're seeing a lot of this unfold right now in Europe. Sadly, I'm just back from kind of a European conference studying, exactly what we think is going to go on in Germany and Great Britain and France. But that the wider the path, to your point, that's lower in carbon, lower in impact on the climate. And then to your listeners, I think specific point, commits to environmental justice.
Yeah.
All those fuels should be on the path. And I think 5 years of fairly intense debate, 5 years of fairly intense analytics, we're convinced that propane today, renewable propane today, are a part of that path.
No, and that's a good point to bring up. Talking about Germany, they were the poster child for all things renewable. And then I didn't personally realize they were so heavily dependent on natural gas, and they're going through some problems right now where they're firing up their coal plants. That is an unfortunate circumstance of events that I guess was not planned for. But that being said, you and I have spoken previously that everyone wants to go renewable energy electric, but we're not there yet with respect to our grid, our raw materials, infrastructure. So doing that overnight simply isn't possible, folks. We need to actually have this transition, and it's a long path. And Tucker, you're involved in that wide path of getting us there. Because, eventually we are going to go 100% renewable, 100% green, but it's going to take time. I mean, honestly, it's going to take time.
Yeah, I tend to even avoid that word energy transition, because transition implies such a smooth and ratable change. I call it a transformation, because that's literally what's happening in front of our eyes. It's a transformation, but in a transformation, things change. There are some big boulders in the road, and there are some bright people out there. The chairman of Toyota is one who's kind of said clearly, I believe we're moving too fast. And really, Wendy, to me, it really all comes back and hinges around batteries to a degree, or stored energy. Renewables have to have a better way of storing energy than we know how to do it today. And I'm more of a technologist probably than anything. I believe that a lot of the technology, the solutions will evolve and get there. But even working with people who are on the cutting edge of batteries, the one thing that reveals to me, everything we're talking about with batteries and energy storage today probably won't be what we're doing just 2 decades from now. And so, Europe was a good indicator, but again, I don't think we had to have the Ukrainian invasion to see that ultimately maybe Germany was on a bad path, that they weren't there for energy independence. And, even think about batteries and the minerals about it. I don't think people realize just how much of that is controlled by really China or Chinese interest. And I don't think it's something to be scared of, fearful of, but I think we have to think about it as we plot this transformation to a cleaner climate, for sure.
And that plotting the transformation is what needs to be done. We can't just leap forward and say we're going to do this. And Joy and I have spoken frequently when we first started this webcast about lithium-ion batteries and how there isn't enough raw materials and the mining they want to do around the world. It's going to be a bit devastating to some communities. Joy, if you remember when we talked about the Salton Sea, they wanted to pull lithium out of that. And, I get it.
Just the supply chain and everything else that's going on as well is not going to help the situation that get us to net zero any faster. If anything, it's going to definitely keep us behind schedule.
Absolutely. And, I'm always trying to find the positive solutions and not really dwell on the why we are not able to do things. But really, when it comes to batteries as we know them today and the minerals that go into that, we've really been outrun, I think, by China to a degree as they were thinking about lithium or cobalt or nickel. I don't know. I mean, we all live in a beautiful country, and I just don't see mining of those materials being really prevalent in the U.S. as we think about the other issues: land use, water use, worker rights. There's a reason that goes on in Afghanistan and Chile and all through Africa, for sure.
And Joy being a water expert, I mean, she knows about the side effects of contamination at our water
Absolutely supply. Horrible. I mean, you study what's going on in Chile right now. It's unconscionable, how they've been damaging their own environment to mine certain minerals. But I think that's the point. And I'm certainly not here to really. I'm here to see. We entered this debate not really to defend propane. We entered this debate to see how does it all fit. And I think where we come back to day in, day out is that there are fuels today that are lower in carbon than a lot of fuels we use today. Diesel is the obvious choice, right? Anytime we can move from diesel to propane, from diesel to natural gas, it's a great positive step. And you think about your own travels, people who have diesel generators, mobile generators, diesel powered vehicles, all of those now have propane options. Diesel shipping, now moving to propane powered shipping. I was recently in the port of Long Beach, and I just stood there for 30 minutes, almost amazed at how much diesel fuel is being consumed to the detriment of the communities that surround Long Beach. And they are ready to be propane today. And I'm happy to say we're moving propane equipment in there at rates that I'm not used to seeing. It'll lower the cost, improve the reliability, but more importantly than anything, I think to me, it'll change the lives of the children who live adjacent to the port, because immediately the air is going to clean up from not greenhouse gas issues, but from environmental issues like particulate matter and NOx that really impact everybody's breathing, but really have a horrific impact on young lungs or, older population. And that, to me, again, classic story of justice and equity.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just to clarify for people listening in, when you burn certain petroleum products, the particulate matter, the small particles, will go up into the atmosphere, move with the wind, but then rain down on the neighborhoods. And that gets absorbed into lungs for children, everybody, but especially children and the elderly. It will cause permanent lung damage, which is why certain communities, they have higher asthma rates. These children were affected more hostily by COVID. Any kind of flu will be more affected. So it
known carcinogen.
Known carcinogen.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And again, I think, Wendy, that's part of the issue is the narrative has been around the only path to a clean climate is through electrification, and people forget to realize sometimes where electricity comes from. I mean, this war about fossil fuels versus electricity, I'm quick to say I think coal, oil, and wood are dirty and, not really shouldn't be used. But electricity that comes from coal, oil, and wood, it's even dirtier because it's not used directly and it's completely inefficient. And, I think I always go back to, thinking about Long Beach or LA in the concept around justice, because if you raise electric demand, those electric facilities make more electricity. What we realize today is those next incremental sources are often not the next cleaner sources. They're the next dirtier sources. And, now who is most impacted? The people who live in the communities that surround those power stations.
Oh, exactly. I mean, it's, as you said, it's a slow transformation. It's going to take time, but we are going in the right direction, and we need to take every step thoughtfully.
Yes.
And leaping headfirst into like the new hot, cool technology. And, when I support, all forms of energy, with the exception of coal and petroleum, gasoline and diesel. I mean, I've talked to people about hydrogen, huge fan of hydrogen, magnetics. Even some person talked about getting electricity out of rhubarb. Who knew? We have a multitude of sources, and we need to be thoughtful in what we do next. And with propane, people are still going to say, oh, that's a big fat lie. You guys are making it up. You are very much a scientist and a technology expert, so you have no reason to make things up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that at least the first thing we had to do is come to grips with the climate and involve in the debate. And I had to weed out of our team anyone who wanted to be a climate denier, right? There's no spot in moving forward in being a denier. So, the first thing is to come to grips with the science and move forward. And then the second thing was to really evaluate, could we in fact be a part of the solution, or should we all go do something else? And I think, we are vigorously involved in technological advancements. And it fascinates me that we all believe that the electric grid may be dirty today, but over the time, the grid will clean up. We'll introduce hydrogen, we'll introduce more solar and wind and more geothermal. The grid will clean up. But we fail to realize that uses like, specifically for me, propane, natural gas, nuclear, will change in technology. We will evolve, and we'll be radically different ourselves, just like the grid, it can be radically different in a decade from now. I think the one thing we're really eager to help change the conversation around decarbonizing now, right?
Yeah.
Not wait a decade, not wait 2 decades. I mean, let's be real. The next versions of nuclear could easily be 2 to 3 decades out if we think about science, permitting, construction, and all that.
Very
We're
true.
able to provide options that decarbonize today. Remove diesel where possible. Use propane where possible. Use in power. We're more involved in power this week than I think we were in the previous 5 years combined.
Oh, wow.
And well beyond America, right? We're providing power all through the Caribbean because we're so much cleaner than the choices they made a decade ago, which were oil or wood, or now we're able to put in hybrid systems at solar, propane, wind, solar, propane, and we're bringing a lot of those systems into the U.S. right now.
Oh, that's fantastic. So what could people expect, hypothetically 5 years from now, from what you're working on? What can we
Well, I
hope
think
to
one
see?
thing we see 5 years from now, but occurring today as well, is just a complete change in transportation, moving away from diesel fuel into propane applications. We're in a cool partnership with Cummins. We really have the next evolution of a propane fueled engine. And it's not around what you drive in your car. It's really around what commercial fleets drive, where payload and range matter. UPS, FedEx, your local Pepsi delivery, the U.S. mail. We're deeply involved with all of those industries, decarbonizing them rapidly. And so, one, I think you'll see a massive change in transportation from diesel to propane. I think you'll see a change in power generation, and not big utility scale plants, microgrids, how the hospital backs up its power system. Because today they automatically think about diesel, and we're beginning to see the more progressive hospitals, prisons, nursing homes, people that use power of that size, thinking about propane. Easier to store, much cleaner to burn, frankly, much cheaper today than diesel fuel. And then the last, I'm excited, is you're going to see a big change in the coast around how we propel ships that come into the ports, and then frankly, how the ports move the goods and services around. It'll intensely electric, because a lot of those big cranes and things are electric driven, but a lot of that other support equipment, the smaller forklifts, will be propane today, while we wait for the electric grid to evolve, while we wait for hydrogen to evolve. And we're really involved in some nice hydrogen projects in Canada. We're blending propane and hydrogen into networks. In the south of the U.S., we're actually using excess electricity to make hydrogen, but then we turn that hydrogen into renewable propane, which is much easier to store, transport, and ultimately use. So much innovation going on around this, molecule called propane.
Oh, I love how you guys are really thinking about everything holistically. You are thinking of every baby step along the way to get us to a cleaner environment with the materials and the capabilities we have today.
That's important.
Which is extreme. Yeah, that's extremely important. And let's be honest, folks, we're going to be using more electricity. We're not going to be using less. Our demand keeps going up every single day. So we have to start preparing for more.
Says this heat wave and everything that's going on with that. So
absolutely.
And when you it's really scary to me to a degree when you study the growth in the electric usage, and so the ultimate increase in electricity, and even look to some other countries. You wish it was that we were going for cleaner sources, but in fact, to supply that extra demand, you kind of go for whatever you can get. And, again, you just have to be thoughtful about getting ahead of this growth. And I think that's where I continue to say, without nuclear, without natural gas, and if you have natural gas, you're going to have propane because it's a necessary byproduct, if you will, of the and you bring it all together and you look at where Germany is today, where Europe is today, and they've lost energy independence. And as Americans, we can really take great pride in the fact that today we have energy independence.
Yeah.
And I think I am sure that we can move to a cleaner climate, one where people can afford the solutions and still not lose our energy independence.
affordability is very important because, we all know how expensive electric cars are, and it's, the prices are coming down, but that's the biggest complaint. People want to be green. They want to drive that new car, but they can't. And being affordable is important.
As I think I've told you, maybe 5 years ago, I really wasn't aware of really what environmental and social justice could mean in this conversation, in this context. And now I think it's the heart of almost all of our analytics is how do we provide clean, healthy, but affordable solutions that are accessible? Because if the everyday person can't access it, so they first have to be able to access these solutions, and secondly, they have to be able to afford it. They're really not benefiting, us or our climate. And I'm quick. I never separate climate from health and justice. That's, to me, it's a trio that's always touchy.
Oh, absolutely. And, we were talking about how everyone likes to silo. Well, social justice is separate from DEI, is separate from climate, is separate from sustainability. It's not. We need to address all of these together as one thing. The second you separate them out, you have individuals kind of fighting for attention, it won't work. It'll fail. So we, as Tucker has talked about, Joy, you have as well. All of these need to be discussed simultaneously and cooperatively. Cooperation.
And just kind of keeping that wide path. And then, as you say, keeping all the science in front of you, because so often people, electric vehicles are the classic example. I drive a zero emission vehicle. Well, you do until you really think about the batteries or charging it. Those systems are quite complex. And we just need, I think, be mindful of, what economists would call the full economic analysis or the full cycle. Sometimes people call it cradle to grave, however you like to talk about it. But, when you think about some of these systems in that context of from beginning to end, it's a very different environmental footprint. And so, our job has been to not only think about that for our own uses, but also think about these competing fuels, and thinking about where are we able to be in 4, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Because with certainty, the clock is ticking, and we need to decarbonize today, and we need to make rapid shifts in decarbonization a decade from now.
Oh, and can I just add in, can we stop talking and start doing, folks?
Right.
Everyone loves to have a conference or a meeting or a discussion or a paper. Implement. We know what needs to be done.
We quote a great philosopher often that the good is the enemy of perfect, right? Or perfect is the enemy of good, right? And I think so often people, and this is the debate I find, people want to step over really good ratable solutions today while waiting for perfect. And you don't have to go very deep into climate science to realize the cumulative effect of carbon today. And here we possess, I think we should be real, that most of the gains we've seen in climate today have resulted from replacing coal or oil with natural gas. And we really need to probably do a little bit more of that, natural gas and propane, as we move to that next step, which would be much deeper penetration of renewables, and probably a more robust pipeline of nuclear projects as well. Yeah, I know that's a hot button for a lot of people, but I also think it's just a reality we have to face. If we want to use cell phones and drive electric cars and have heat pumps, and we want to live to the standard of living we're probably going to have to rely on nuclear power as a part of that solution, just because of energy density.
Absolutely.
We're not going to fill up our entire planet with, solar panels or wind turbines.
No, we need options. And I did interview a woman on nuclear power a couple months ago, very enlightening in conversation. And it, as she said, this is not the nuclear power of the 1970s. This is not 3 Mile Island or Chernobyl or any of that. This is all new technology. So, we won't diverge into that. Just check out that interview.
But that same level of innovation, I think, is always interesting. It's coming to us as well as we think about this new brand of engines, a new brand of water heater, frankly, a new brand of furnace for your home. We're achieving, I always say modern engineering has met modern production management, and we're doing things today that I don't really think we dreamed that we would do 5 years ago.
Oh,
in
yeah.
terms of efficiencies and cost of operation and cleanliness. It's a beautiful evolution, and really I don't see a stop to it yet by any means.
No, we are growing and accelerating with our knowledge base, which is the most important thing. And
Right.
you know, more of the youngins are getting into the engineering, which I personally love.
Yeah.
But Tucker, so when people want to find you at the Propane Education and Research Council, I wanted to make sure I got that correct. How can they find you if they want to learn more about this?
Well, we love to drive them to our website. We spend a lot of time just beginning to educate people in this, and the website address is propane.com.
Easy.
It's a great place just to go, and there's a whole environmental tab. And frankly, if you are a physicist and you want to see the details, quite a few white papers there, but a lot of it is aimed at just the everyday person who's trying to understand, in fact, how could propane today, renewable propane tomorrow, fit into the debate, and what are the opportunities to lower my carbon footprint by using a fuel that a lot of people didn't think about. So it's propane.com. And
I love the fact you talk to the people. You're not doing all high level, because we try to do that here in ESJ. You know, no acronyms, no high level jargon. We are trying to communicate to everyone, not just people in our little sphere of influence. So I like
it's interesting. One of the things, I'm often impacted by policy, but because we really don't lobby, we don't lobby governments, we don't lobby, we work with manufacturers, we worked with a lot of end users. I talk about UPS and FedEx, but I'd also talk about the farming community or, you know, the medical community. You know, we work with the end users who are impacted because, again, we really do start with that grassroots effort, and it's been a rewarding experience. We really engaged in this just 5 or 6 years ago to really begin to think about what does the future look like, and how do we get to a clean climate? Does propane in fact have a role? I don't think people realize that America produces more propane than any other place in the world by far.
Did not know that.
Because we produce more natural gas as well. And so today we export large quantities to Europe, to Asia, to South America, to Central America. But, you know, for us, we've been trying to figure out how can we keep this in the climate debate.
Yes.
Using it to drive down our carbon emissions and produce solutions, as we said, that people can access and afford.
Oh, absolutely. No, and that's the most important thing, is these steps to clean, because it's not overnight, it's going to take time, but affordability. And that's what you guys are focusing on. So Tucker, I will leave you with that. I thank you so much for your time. Guys, check out propane.com, check out Tucker. They're doing great things. And, you know, if you have questions about propane or you're just not buying it, reach out, read the papers, check the technology. These are all steps to a cleaner environment, since there will be no overnight solution. So on that, I'm Wendy Nystrom with Environmental Social Justice, with my co-host, Miss Joy Langford, the beautiful Joy Langford. And Mr. Tucker, thank you so much. We'll catch you guys next time. Take care.
Joy, Wendy, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.